our spirit? What is it? Where does it go? Are we able to see them using our mind's eye? If so, just what can spirit teach us? Welcome to School Through Spirit. Host DeEtte Renee is a certified psychic medium and master teacher of psychic and mediumship development through LWISSD. DeEtte was born knowing spirit and now is here to help you better understand the spirit world. And now your host, DeEtte Renee.
Good Tuesday morning, everybody. This is an offshoot, as you know, our new feature of School Through Spirit, where I do separate interviews from our regular Monday show. And this morning I have Mrs. Dr. I should say Miss or Mrs. I'm not sure, but Dr. Rita Louise. As you guys know, I couldn't get a name straight if you spelled it out, pronounced it, and phonetically gave it to me. So, but we're working on that. That's stuff we're working on. This morning, Miss Dr. Rita is just this amazing woman. And I will tell you what, let's just read her bio a little bit here for us. She's the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics and the founder or the former host of Just Energy Radio. She is a naturopathic physician and a 20-year veteran of the human potential field. Her unique gift as a medical intuitive and a clairvoyant illuminates and enlivens her work. She's the author of books. She is the author of the book, Dang It, It Was Me All Along, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, Stepping Out of Eden, E.T. Chronicles, What Myth and Legend Have to Say About Human Origin, Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4, Dark Angels, An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities, and The Power Within, a Psychic Healing Primer. Now, she's also been seen on feature films, feature length videos and video shorts. She has been, all over and has so much amazingness to bring to the table. And I want to just welcome Miss. I'm always a Miss or I'm a lady, so I'm just Dr. Rita Louise. And I'm not even Southern, but I always have to put Miss or Ma'am or my lady in there, and it just messes up the doctor. I apologize.
That's okay.
I give you extra initials. So welcome this morning. Thank you for being on with me today.
I am so honored to be here with you and your people.
You know what? We have an amazing following. They have been with me for 3 years now. And even when I switched networks, they came with us. It's been a joy. It's been a joy. So, Dr. Rita, what is it? Because you have a very broad base, but it all is kind of in the paranormal. I always use that term paranormal because it is such a broad base umbrella. Everybody wants to put paranormal with ghost hunting, but really it's anything not normal.
Mm-hmm.
So what gained your interest in this field?
So here's my story. So growing up, there were 2 TV shows. One was The Amazing Crescent, who was a mentalist, and he had ESP.
Okay.
And then there was the series, The Sixth Sense, which was not the movie, but a TV series that featured Gary Collins, who was a parapsychology professor, and he had ESP too. And, so he would like walk into a room and pick up a pen and the image of a dead person would appear, or he would have these precognitive moments. And I was like, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But, back a million years ago, there really wasn't a whole lot of information about psychic abilities and whatever. But I started reading and learning and growing. And finally, many years later, found the Berkeley Psychic Institute and studied with them. And, finished that, started a private practice. And one of the things that I found was, when you do intuitive work, we all have different gifts. Like I don't talk to dead people. I choose not to talk to dead people. And I'm not auditory. And so they don't talk to me. I can feel their emotional energy, but I don't get like, grandma said this. I just don't. But what I kept finding was people's health issues.
Okay.
And so, I would be doing a session or energy work, and it's kind of like, hysterectomy or cesarean birth. And they'd look at me like, huh? And then the next question would always be, well, what can I do about it?
Mhm.
And, you know, my comment was, meditate. I had nothing,
Right.
which drove me to go back to school to get a degree as a naturopath.
Okay.
So that I could tell them something, you know, start them on the road to recovery, especially if it had manifested into the physical form.
Right.
And then I decided to go back to and get my PhD in natural health counseling, you know, so I combine the intuitive work, which really kind of talks about the thoughts and feelings part,
Hmm.
and the medical part to kind of this whole package. How's that?
I love that. I love it because, as you know, I'm a psychic medium and a medical intuitive. So I hear dead people, and I always tell people I rather hear them. Don't play Pictionary with me. I don't do Pictionary very well.
And see, I'm good at Pictionary.
No, no, give me the nose. I'll describe the nose, but I don't want to see pieces, you know. So I love that.
It's funny because I do a live stream, and so people come on and they ask questions in the chat, you know, so inevitably someone will come on and want to know about some dead person. And I have this very hard rule about I won't talk about dead people. I mean, if they turn up
It's one thing.
in the session, that's fine. But to go and actively call Aunt Sally to me to have a conversation, I'm like, you know, I do ghost hunting, but I'm scared of ghosts. I mean, I'm not scared of the ghosts. I'm scared of the bumps in the night.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't want more dead people in my house. I already have dead people in my house.
I love that. I'm the same way. And I walk through the house going, "Hey, how you doing today?" You know,
Yeah, but they're my dead people. They're not your dead people.
and people don't realize that, and that's the truth. That's the truth. Now, I've got a really big question for you because
Okay.
people give me this question because I call myself a medical intuitive, not a medical medium. Now, do you see there's a difference between the two, or do you kind of throw them together?
I would throw them together. I
Okay.
mean, I don't really know what a medical medium would do. Really, I mean, we don't have like dead body parts. And I mean, I always connect medium with connecting with those that have passed,
Right.
you know, but this is going to sound terrible, but I'm blunt. You know, but medium does give you good search terms in Google because you have medical and then medium, and people are looking for medium. And so I just think it's a good marketing thing.
Yeah, well, and I'm the same way. I'm the same way. And I just wanted to hear from somebody who has that PhD if they're separated or not, because I'm always like, it's one big bowl of salad in there, you know.
And I don't want people to call me about dead people.
This is not about dead people today. I love that because you're going to get a million because I brought that up, you know, and I apologize ahead of time. But excuse me, I've had this cough for over a month and it's driving me batty. So when you're looking at, you know, because your titles in research and your titles in books really do kind of, they're different. You know, it's not like you're like a, you know, a Raymond Moody who just went down, you know, the afterlife type of, or life after death. You know, your titles kind of span a lot of different things.
Mhm.
What gave you those interests? Was it just like something that sparked your interest to kind of become like an authority on a lot of different things?
And you'll hear this, and your audience will hear this. So I just do what they tell me,
Mm-hmm.
and they will present a problem for me to solve.
Okay.
You know, and so it's kind of like, okay, I guess I'm gonna like do research on this, which always turns into a book.
It does.
Pretty
I'm always fascinated by that whole write the book thing, you know, because as you know, so many people get that thought that they're supposed to write a book, or you go and sit down with some psychic somewhere that says you're supposed to write a book. And nobody can write the book. How do you actually get to that point where you write it? I know that's an off the wall question, but for me, it's, and somebody that's written them so many books.
I mean, so there are people that think I'm weird because I really find a lot of joy in research,
Okay.
you know, and so there's always a lot of research in my books versus I'm writing a memoir,
Okay.
or I'm writing, you know, some tell-all novel. you know? So there might be, so like my new book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, is probably the most candid because I share a lot of personal stories, but it's not my story. The stories exemplify how it was me all along. And what you need to do to change what's going on inside.
Oh, wow. I like that. I like that because these days I've been talking a lot about consciousness and changing and how the world is found. I really do hate the word reawakening or awakening. I think that's a broad-based term and what that really means. But I do believe that we need more information on that, you know, to change the way we think, to change the way we look at things, you know. And I do believe for myself, the reason I don't like the term awakening is because I think everybody puts it in that spiritual, psychic, angels slot. And it really isn't about that. It's really awakening with a different way of thinking across the board. So can you kind of enlighten more about that? Like, dang, it was me anyway. You know, what you were meaning by that?
So I'm going to give a little backstory. So the last book I wrote was The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist. And I wrote that book because I had just ended a relationship and came to the realization that most of my relationships were with narcissistic people or self-serving people. And I went back in my history and it's like, ooh, narc. And I was like, okay, so if that's my pattern, what created this pattern and what can I do to change this pattern? So that was the problem, that I went and researched this. And I mean, obviously you do intuitive work, you know, you're probably an empath, you know, and there really is a very interesting dynamic that happens between sensitive individuals, and I'm going to put a caveat on there, wounded, sensitive individuals who are the people pleasers, the givers, and are very forgiving, which is the wounding part, that will put up with narcissistic personalities.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished that book. The book ends with me getting into this new relationship, and I'm all like, oh, great. Oh my God, he turned out to be terrible in a very different way, in a very covert way.
Right.
And so he's out the door, and I realized that I didn't learn the lessons, and that because I was at rock bottom, my goal in life was to figure out what I needed to do to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, like I'm running on autopilot. I have, you know, this old programming that just keeps rearing its ugly head. And my stress response system is going, oh, wait, have a freak out, blah, 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 you know. And it really didn't matter who it was. You know, I would respond in the same way. And so this book is really about understanding how we operate on the inside. Right. And then working to really become aware of, okay, this situation happened and this is how I responded. Well, is this a healthy response? And if it's not a healthy response, then what would be healthier?
Right.
You know, and it was interesting, and kind of going back to something that you said about the awakening. Mm-hmm. There are so many books and so much literature about all of the negative stuff going on in our lives. You know, you have PTSD, you have this, you have abandonment issues and blah, blah, blah. And so little written about higher vibrating energies. Yeah. What is happiness about? You know, mm-hmm. What is joy about?
Yeah.
How do you connect with, you know, and I don't even like using this terminology, but there's nothing else. How do you connect with the divine? How do you get in the flow?
Yep.
So, you know, the first part of the book talks about all these negative things and the inner critic and your ego and your stress response system. And then I had to do a whole chapter about, I'm sorry, but I don't have other words to use, because in the literature, in the scientific literature, there is nothing that talks about higher vibrating energies. And I'm going to use words that might be okay with some people and might be really taboo to other people, but I have nothing to work with. And so I have to use these concepts, and I try to make them generic enough and personal enough that they could recognize, when they're in a flow state, when they're not in a flow state, which doesn't have anything to do with religion. It has to do with what's going on inside.
I think you have just nailed everything I've been working on lately. So, I mean, literally.
Well, then you need to get a copy of the book.
I'm going to have to get the book, I'll tell you, because I have been in those searches of those books that do give you something more than, like what you said, is out there. Because inside here, when you get, and I do believe that a lot of people understand that when you get to this point of, one thing I've been saying a lot is getting rid of spirituality. Well, not getting rid of it, because I think it's a different level. It's just a different level of being. But really, we've never had a word or a term to go, what is next? What is on that next vibrational step? And I just started using the word consciousness. Like, we're going into, I'm being conscious about my thoughts. I'm being conscious about my feelings. I'm being conscious, and it's taken those word terms like ego into play and going, wow, the negative self-talk you have, and how that really, that energy you're shifting out there. And I know that's a lot of, new age terminology, but it really, I think, takes it into another light. And I like the fact that you have taken your own experiences and went, I'm conscious about this, and I'm not going to put this on the narcissist. I'm going to put this on myself, because truly, I don't know if a narcissist could be a narcissist without us. If they didn't have us, where would they do?
Well, but bottom line, the only common denominator in all of those relationships was me.
True.
And I was tired of being happy. I was tired of living my life ruminating and worrying, and just, I don't want to say I was always in a dark place, but, one of the statistics that I found was that 80% of our thinking is negative. 80%. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I want to be one of those people that have joy in their life and glow and don't be stuck.
Yeah.
But you're right. You have to really look to like new age concepts, religious concepts, to find that piece of information. And I know it makes people really uncomfortable to think about it, but again, mainstream, this is a line out of the book, mainstream scientists who seem to think they have the corner marketed or, on happiness, don't write anything about it.
They don't. And it's a gold mine, and it's a gold mine, and people don't realize that's, you've been hearing terms like third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. And for myself, up until recently, even though this is my work, I would go, what are you talking about? Because they use the terms, but they don't tell you what those different thought processes are. And even if they did, I don't know. This is a theory. I don't know how many people would jump on board with fighting your own thoughts. It's hard work.
Actually, it's not hard work.
Okay.
It was so easy, and I've worked with my clients, because I have like my total freak out, emotionally dysregulated clients that, the wind blows the wrong way and they're freaking out. And some friends who were tired of reacting all the time. And I started, making suggestions about paying attention to your thoughts and becoming mindful and doing some exercises, breathe, do this, do that. And with practice, and I'm talking about, it's not even meditating for an hour. So like I take my dog out and I sit on the porch and I'll sit there and I'll do some breathing exercises, or I'll do some tapping, and that's it. And then monitoring, because that's the practice part, so that when you're in a bad place, you've worked with those tools and your body already has the relaxation response kind of anchored in,
Right.
that there's the possibility that you won't go like totally down the rabbit hole.
Right.
So 6 months of just really focus. I mean, not that you're perfect,
Right.
but I have found a substantial change in my clients and with people that I've worked with.
Okay. So there's hope for people like me. I'm in the breathing part. I start to get this and I go, oh, I'm going down a rabbit hole. And I go, stop, breathe. Just breathe. 10 seconds of breathing.
And really, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's like, it was so not rocket science. And I'm like, God, I've read all these books and, but I think you have to get to the place where you just want to be happy and you just want to have peace in your life to do that.
Right. Now, was it, when you talk about the narcissist, and we always look at the narcissist as relationships when it comes to like a partner in life, people tend to bring in narcissist friends, narcissist acquaintance. So it really gets to be hard when you start, at least it was for myself, to go, wait a second, there's a whole group of people that are going to go out of my life that I'm going to just gently, and I do it gently to say, I'm not going to get in your face. I'm not going to scream at you. I'm just going to gently stop messaging. I'm going to gently stop talking. I'm just going to kind of pull my energy back and say, I cannot have you in my life or my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
You find that is a difficult task then, to be able to just go, oh my gosh, what have I really, it's more than an intimate relationship. This ends up being several relationships.
Exactly. There are people that you're really close to, which are more challenging. And then there are the people that are cursory people. And, you can maybe spend time with them. You can maybe go over, for Christmas and know that you're just going to be there for a little while and then you're gone. But I'll just share my current challenge. So I have a friend that I have known for years, and she's a chronic complainer. Now, I used to be a chronic complainer, but that was one of the things that got added to my awareness and become conscious list of, wow, you really do complain a lot. And some of my best stories are of me complaining about something because they're really freaking funny.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, I'm losing material here. But she still complains all the time. And so I have been doing just that. I've been backing my energy off. We don't talk every day. And then she sends me this message. My neighbor, literally across the street, is selling his house and was interested in potentially buying it. And I was like, no. It's like, you live 100 miles away, so I can come visit you and whatever, but I cannot have you live across the street from me. No.
You're going to make me move to Utah. I'm going to find a different climate. Oh, I get that. I'm a firm believer for living in the boondocks just to keep myself safe from reality some days.
But one of the things that I found is that as you move out, and I'm going to say the toxic people, the people that don't raise your vibration, that don't support you for who you are. And one of the exercises that I give to my clients in evaluating their relationships, whoever they are, is, do you feel whole and uplifted when you're with them? Or do you walk away and feel bad or feel used or that your energy is down? Because that's the barometer of whether you want them in your life or not.
Right. That's a great way of looking at that. I like that. I love that. Wow.
But as you start moving those people out, then you start attracting other people that are of a higher vibration, and you can choose to let them into your circle or not.
And that's beautiful. And honestly, I know a lot of people I've talked to, they've went, but there's not many people around me. And I always tell them, thank goodness for internet, thank goodness for new technology, because my friends are all over the world. I have nobody in my backyard, and not that that keeps me safe, but it gives me like-minded, and that big old hemisphere that we have is just, it just opened me up to so much more.
Mhm.
Those like-minded people to me.
But I live in Podunk, Texas. I mean, I think there's 25,000 people that live in this city.
Yeah.
And but there's some great people that I love to death. I mean, they might not be like spiritual people, and you maybe can't say chakras to them because they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But they have great loving energy, and I would rather hang around that, and feel safe and feel supported, even though like our base commonalities aren't the same. We might talk football, who knows,
It's whatever.
But I would rather be with that than someone who can talk the talk, but they have bad energy.
Yeah. That's always a bad thing. That's always a bad thing. And I always think that, I'm not sure if being intuitive is a good thing or a bad thing, because you feel the energy right off the bat and you're like, not going there,
I have excused myself from situations. So I have a girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to lunch with this guy, and you should come. He's really fun, and he talks about UFOs and this and that." So I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And I love her to death.
Right.
I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, no, he got some funky, weird energy. But we're in the past, I would have just like been the trooper and stayed there till whenever. And I was like, okay, we're done eating. Gotta go. See ya.
And then you take that home with you, because then you keep thinking about it. And people don't realize that that's what we end up doing when we're polite. We do what mother, taught us how to do. We take those thoughts with us. You'll carry that most of the day. Why carry it?
I try not to.
That's
if I catch myself carrying stuff, because there's the big things, but as you start practicing, you start noticing the little things. You go to lunch, it's a really kind of uncomfortable situation. You find yourself thinking about it, even subtly in the background. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about this. What do I need to do to let that go? Do I need to do some breathing? I'm a big advocate, and this always sounds funny, especially if they really affect me, is doing things that are physical. So I will like clean my house. You can tell I'm upset if I'm scrubbing a bathtub or scrubbing cabinets or cleaning out the microwave. But it burns off, sometimes just breathing for me just doesn't work. Just sitting there trying to meditate just doesn't work. But if I'm scrubbing a floor.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I teach, and I tell people I hate to meditate. I don't meditate. It's an evil word, is what I say. And they look at me, and I'm like, I'd rather mow my lawn or scrub my, go clean my car, do whatever, and focus my mind that way and get blank versus trying to sit there and woosa it out in my chair.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting and not often talked about concept, but we can only have one thought at a time. So we can think about going to work, or we can think about dinner, or we can think about our pet, or we can think about our loved ones, but we can only think about one thing at a time. Now, those things can switch back and forth very rapidly, but only one thing. And so meditation, and I'm using this in a very global way, is about focusing your mind on one thing. So if you're scrubbing your floors, you're focusing on one thing. If you're mowing the yard, you're focusing on one thing. If you're meditating in the true sense, you're focusing on one thing. And so it doesn't matter what you do, because the goal is to focus.
I love that. Now, I'm going to take us in a different direction, but I'm kind of hoping it kind of brings it together. But with some of like your other books or your film work, because I'm a huge person when it comes to, ancients and mythology and all that wonderful stuff, And you've got different titles in here, like, the weapons of the gods, archetypes of the ancients, things of that nature. Did some of that work kind of, and obviously I haven't read it or seen it, but because you have a lot to research, you would have taken me years, I think. You know who Mike Ricksecker is, and it's the same concept. So much information, But did some of that previous work really get you to the point where you're at today, studying some of the older stuff?
No, not really. So my first love in life was archaeology.
Okay.
And my second love in life was psychic stuff. And I came into that when I was in like 12 or 13. So I went to Catholic school, and I would like do projects on the theory of evolution for the science fair, which the nuns really didn't appreciate.
Right.
And so when 2012 was coming along, there were TV shows that were talking about the Mayan calendar and this and this and this. And in this one show, it said, well, and the Hindus talk about this as well. And I ended up watching the show again because I thought maybe they would talk about the Hindu part.
Right.
And but they didn't. It was just a one-line thing. So now I have to go dig because I want to see if there are parallels. And that opened the door to this giant rabbit hole of ancient mysteries. But it really satisfied that archaeology, ancient art history part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love doing that research.
Yeah. To me, it's amazing because when you're looking at ancient, and because it's been decades for me to look at any of it, but I always like, there's always a grain of truth in even all mythology. There's something there. And that's, where do you find the truth of it? And I always look at archaeologists like, holy cow, for you guys to be able to find those minute grains of salt of truth in something that has been bolstered or blown up. It's just, to me, it's amazing, So mine started with Zeus and Hercules. Don't ask me why.
And see so there was the 2012 thing, which what the Hindus said and what the Mayan calendar said were totally not the same.
Right.
Similar, but not the same. But then the next place that I ended up landing was the flood narrative, so Noah and the flood.
Right.
And I had heard that there were like over 500 flood narratives around the world. And in researching the Hindu part, there's this story about this guy in a boat and surviving this flood. And you read it and it sounds a lot like the Noah story. And I'm like, that's interesting. So now I'm digging in, looking for these other flood stories, which are remarkably similar. I had a notebook and I was planning on like taking notes on all these different concepts that were tied to the flood narrative. And I figured there'd be like a ton because, the example I give, there's the tsunami that happened in Southeast Asia, and those people, that's their flood story. And then there was Hurricane Katrina and the people in New Orleans, and that's their flood story.
Right.
And they're not the same.
No.
They can't be the same. No. But you read these ancient flood stories, and I got it down to one paragraph. There was a wise, pious, or virtuous man who is warned of an impending flood. He built an ark, climbs in a canoe, gets on a boat, gets in a boat, gets on a leaf, climbs a tree or climbs a mountain, and is saved from flood. And he goes there with his wife, sometimes an old man, sometimes there are animals. In some of the stories, an animal is released, not necessarily a bird, but some kind of an animal. And that's it.
Wow. So not like the story that we know in North America.
And so, but you sit there and go, okay, so to me, they were all telling the same story. The details changed.
Right.
but it was the same, from the same perspective, kind of the same cadence, the same rhythm to it. And that opened the door to like really looking at this commonality in myths from around the world to see. And what I uncovered was that there, to me, there's a global narrative that starts with in the beginning and ends right after the Noah flood. You know, if we do it in biblical terms, the Tower of Babel, where we all get our own languages because the viewpoint of the myths change. You know, the whole, it just changes in a lot of different ways.
Right. So now, when you find all those similarities, does it come down to this is truth then? Or is it still just a story?
My personal opinion is if you have people from around the globe telling the same story, then there must be some truth to it, even though we don't really know the fine details of what that is. You know, and my criteria was, you know, you might find the story with the Sumerians. And so if there was an Egyptian story, I didn't really count that because geographically they were in very close proximity. But if I could find that same story in Australia, or if I could find that same story in the Americas, that gave it a whole lot more credibility in my mind because they're just so separated.
Yes. You know, and I couldn't agree more because to me, I'm that person that, because I do believe in the story on some premise in just this one story, because every time you find another, you know, mystery on there looking for the lost ark, or they think they've pinpointed it, I don't know if they're really going to find it or if it ever was actually there. But I have this hopes that someday that story will be validated, you know, with some strong evidence other than just my faith or belief in a story that somebody has told me.
You know, but then there's the whole timeline of when did it actually happen? You know, and there's a lot of controversy on that, you know, but, you know, and I don't mean to offend anybody, you know, but there's a lot of these stories that they want to keep inside the Judeo-Christian religious dogma and not step outside of that. And so there's a lot of people that look to prove the Bible through other myths. And when I worked on this, I took the Bible and I said, you're going over there, you know, and I'm not looking at it. And I'm going to let the myths say what they're going to say. They're going to timeline out, however they're going to timeline out. And then after I was done, I brought the Bible back in and it was remarkably consistent.
Wow.
With one caveat, the Bible only has one God. These other cultures have multiple gods.
They're multiples. Yeah, they have multiples.
Well, and I'm just going to say this in kind of a joking way, you know, so in order to only have one God, you have to get rid of a slew of stories because you can't have this God fighting this God and these people doing these things and all of this stuff happening with all of these gods if there's only one God.
Kind of, that's one of those things that I always say, you know what, I'm going to find the truth when I die. You know, exactly. I would love to know it now. I wish somebody from above would come down and say, this is the truth. Boom, 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 boom. But I think that's one of those realities I'm going to have to get to the other side and say, okay, what is this really about? You know, or is it just a bunch of you up there having a great day? You know, just what is this? So I love that. You know, and I love the fact that we've bridged on that because I think it does bring people's awareness to different things, because even when you're looking at just that one story, you know, like from my understanding, people are always going for the ark in certain locations. Well, we need to take it into account that when the original story started, who knows if it's still in the same plane as it was now? You know, climate now is changing for us. What was the climate back then? Was it on, you know, more Egyptian? Was it more in, you know, Antarctica? Who really knows? You know, so we have to take into a lot of account of just, you know, natural evolution of life, you know, and water separating land further or whatever it might be. And I don't think a lot of that is always taken into play either.
You know, and I just thought of this, so I'm just going to go here. You know, so I was on Gaia TV on Ancient Civilizations #5.
There you go.
You know, and one of the topics of the show was Mu, which, well, it was Atlantis and Mu. And I never really did much research on Mu. Atlantis, I kind of wrote off because you do, and people got pissed off at me because you do not find the Atlantis story in other mythological records.
Right.
And then I'm like, you know, I didn't find it anywhere else. And so, bye. You got to go away. But the story of Mu, you find in the East and you find in the West. So you find it in the Southeast Asian islands and you find it in South America. And it was the story of a massive flood. And one myth talks about 65 million people died in that encounter.
Right.
You know, so what if the Ark isn't in the Middle East at all? What if it's actually in the Pacific somewhere or South America somewhere?
Yeah. That's huge.
About taking that step back and being open to letting the research tell you.
Yeah. People need to do that. We don't tend to do that. You know, we want the quick answer. We don't want the research. That's a lot of volumes to go through if you think about it. That's really going back over. And I don't know if any one person has enough energy to dig that far back to say, really, where is this? Where is the possibility? Mm-hmm. And then do they find Atlantis and go, wait a second, you really, you know, that's where the flood started. Who knows?
Well, and I find the Atlanta story interesting, but I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't find it anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to give a different example that I was thrilled, you know, because I had written it off at first. You know, so in the Bible, there's the story of the sons of God and the daughters of men, you know, and the sons of God came to the earth and mated with the daughters of men, and their offspring were the Gibborim. Right. And I'm like, okay, kind of a weird story. Sounds pretty good, but, you know, I'm not really finding it. But then I did. And you find it in the Epic of Ramayana. And he talks about Vishnu sending the gods down to the earth to mate with the apes and bears to create these demigod offspring that have increased knowledge and increased wisdom. So like the god of architecture, his offspring helped Rama build this bridge, you know? And so like, and Gibborim are men of wisdom, men of renown. And so like, you know, they're demigods because they're the sons of God, daughters of men. And I'm like, you know, it's the same narrative, except the Ramayana gives a whole lot more story to it, except one's a virtuous act, you know, in the Ramayana, it's a virtuous act. Mm-hmm. And in the Bible, it's not.
I'm still waiting to see if there's more books to the Bible and see if we get a full story. So I think that's the next generation of people that storm someplace to find them. So, you know, it'll be interesting if that ever happens. One other thing, and I know I'm jumping on you again, but there's one other thing you have done that I am just totally in awe of. And it's the secret of the truth of the law of attraction. Okay. That's a mouthful. And I always tell people the secret was a great thing, but there really was no secret, you know, which I think confused the masses, you know, and I think it really sparked the spirituality, and I think it confused people. And I think people are going, oh my gosh, what do we do? And for myself, that's kind of where it puts it. But what did you find when you kind of delved into that whole title?
You know, so when I wrote that, it was just kind of like a cursory little thing, but I ended up revisiting it in the Dang It Was Me All Along book.
Okay.
Okay, so I have to sit here and kind of frame this in my mind. So I'm sitting there talking about getting in alignment and getting in the flow. And when you read older authors, so prior to like Think and Grow Rich kind of books, they really are talking about paying attention to your consciousness and getting in the flow and having life be better. Mm-hmm. And, but then everything changed into being this monetary, like if I make a vision board, I'll get a new car. And if I do this, I'll have success, which the reality is that's a very ego-driven way of having things happen.
Right.
Versus your goal and your only goal is to be in alignment and recognizing your blessings and saying thank you. And allowing the universe to drive it. Because that's when things, this year, I released the book and I shockingly have been getting all kinds of messages from people that they want me to come on their show and like, hey, we want you, we love you. And I'm like, okay, which is just a new thing. But my focus is just what do I need to do to keep my energy high and stay in the flow?
Right.
And I'm not really doing hardly anything. So in the book, I talk about the law of attraction. I'm like, well, if being in the flow and having good energy spurs the law of attraction to happen and I get $1 million in a new car, I'm all about it. But that's not my focus.
Right.
And I'm okay with that being a byproduct.
Yeah. I love how you just put that because it's so simple, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so simple. Because I'm truly of the belief system these days that, the secret is that we weren't here to struggle. We weren't here to go, oh my gosh, we have to go through hell to get to, to heaven type of thing. And it's been a hard road to get to that mindset, to go, no, I wasn't, my life is only what it is because I look at it that way. Not that I look at it from a different aspect and go, wow, this has been an incredible life. Holy crap. Oh my gosh, I got to do all these things. And somebody else might go, those aren't things. Those are awful. Well, that's your perspective, but if I stay in line with all the experiences I've had and keep a higher vibration about it, maybe good things will happen,
Well, and one of the things about the law of attraction, and in a lot of other things is a lot of people will sit there and pull their tools out when their life is a piece of crap. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, okay, I got bad brain, I guess I should meditate now. And then they wonder why they don't work.
Right.
Versus this is how I'm living my life. And then when something bad happens, there's more of an opportunity to turn it around or to recognize, okay, this is where I'm at and I'm in a bad place and just kind of riding the storm out.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it. And people don't realize that. I always think to myself, when I do actually meditate, I put my hand on my chest and I focus on my breath and only my breath. And people go, why? Well, to me, breath is life. Breath is calming. Breath is my vibration. Breath is my everything. And if my breathing can bring me through, if my breathing can get me to meditate, gosh knows it's a miracle then. You know what I mean? So
but you are meditating.
Yeah.
You're mowing your lawn. You're scrubbing your floors.
That's meditating.
That's meditating. Just people don't see that in the traditional sense.
Right. Yeah. And I'm a firm believer in it. But for me, it's just doing more of it. Maybe I need to scrub
my lawn. I have yard work that needs doing.
You're in Texas. You don't have as much lawn probably as I do in Wisconsin.
I have like 3/4 of an acre. So
there you go. I've got snow right now.
Okay, I don't. It's freezing.
Well, I've been waiting for it because I still have a lot of relatives in Texas, and for the last few years, you guys have gotten snow and we haven't. And I'm like, ooh, what is happening here? Well, we're finally getting snow in mid-January, so I'm not going to complain.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost time for Christmas, is what it's telling me. I love it. I love it.
But I think people think that using these tools and becoming mindfully aware is just so hard. And again, it's not. It's just about paying attention.
Yeah.
and maybe breathing and maybe tapping or maybe going for a walk or, whatever you're being led to do, or just riding the storm out and having a glass of wine,
I do one thing every day religiously, and it's to say I've accomplished something today if it's the only thing I did, and then it's to make my bed. And that is something I started probably 2 years ago. I was not a bed maker my whole life. I was got on my blankets. It was what I was going to dirty up that night. Why make it, And 2 years ago, somebody said, if you make your bed every morning, you've at least accomplished one thing. If you don't accomplish it, that can start your day of, I've accomplished something. Mm-hmm. That really started to change my own mindset to go, what else can I accomplish? Well, I got up and took a shower. For some, that's huge. Mm-hmm. Sometimes throughout the day, that might be the best part of my morning, or my best part of my day. But looking at life in a positive aspect versus more of a heavy tone negative aspect, which for myself also started to change my own thoughts, and who I want in my life, who I don't want in my life. What do I want to be?
But I'm going to assume that there was also a certain amount of reflection, in that moment of, I accomplished this, or later in the day, it's like, well, I got this done, and I got this done, and I got this done, which is also about that awareness.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of shift this a little bit, so I have a lot of, I'll say procrastinator clients, procrastinator friends, which I am so not a procrastinator. And they will run around with all this anxiety and all of this worry. It's like, oh, well, I need to clean this, or I need to paint this wall, and it's been 5 years, and blah, blah, blah. And I just look at them and go, but if you just buckled up and did it, then you wouldn't have this anxiety, and you could pat yourself on the back for a job being done. Yeah. And so you're self-perpetuating your own anxiety because spirit is telling you over and over again, go paint that wall, go paint that wall. And every ounce of your ego inside is going, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But if you just freaking do it, then that voice that's going, go paint that wall, will go away.
Now I got to write a book. Thanks so much. I have no problem painting the wall. It's you need to write a book. You need to write a book. And I'm like, I know I need to write the
book. After I finished at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, I kept getting, you need to go back to school. You need to go back to school. So I got my Reiki certification. I mean, the easy, cheap one, not the 10-year thing. Then I got my hypnotherapy certification. Then I did something else. And every time I finished, they were like, you need to go back to school. And I'm like, God. So went and started the naturopath program, which I loved. Yeah. I just didn't think that, it was like I was remembering stuff that I already knew. And when I started, was in the study, but not that far, I would be working with clients and, and I'm going to say it this way, I'd be channeling, oh, well, you need vitamin B and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, where the heck is that coming from? I didn't even know. Right. Finish that up. So then it's I'm like, okay, I can be done. No, literally I sent my last thing in and they were like, okay, you need to get your PhD and write a book. But since that time, they have not bothered me once about going back to school. Not once.
I'm going to write the book. I'm going to write the book. I'm sorry. That's all it's going to take for them to leave me alone.
Leave you alone.
Give me 5 minutes of, there's not something else to do. I'll write the book.
Well, I know a lot of authors, and it doesn't have to be that big of a book. And I'll even say it this way. It doesn't even have to be that good of a book.
I'll take that. I'll take it. I always think of it this: if the book helps me and nobody else, that's what it is for.
Mhm.
And I can honestly,
You shut up.
yeah. Well, I can honestly say they've written the book. They do. They write the book in your head for you sometimes. And I've always backed up with no, no, no. But I can honestly say now that I've really kind of stumbled upon the conscious thinking and way of looking at it. Now looking back in my life, I'm like, makes sense why I didn't want to write that book yet. I didn't want to write it from a narcissistic mindset. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in this. If I'm going to write a book, I want to write one that's healthy for somebody, and what the outcome was, not where I'm still in the crap,
Mhm.
So, and not have a book that's somewhat okay, not just another something on the shelf for somebody.
Well, when I was working on my dissertation, it took me months to start, because there was this thing in my mind that said, well, it needed to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then finally I said, well, you really only have to get a C. So it doesn't have to be that good. And I mean, I already had been writing a lot and already had written one book at that point in time and a lot of articles. And I'm like, so give yourself some slack. I mean, it doesn't have to be great. It just needs to be something to turn in. And it took all the pressure off.
I love that.
Took all the pressure off. And so, so maybe you just need to say, well, it just needs to be something, because I'm sure it will come out perfect.
It will. And it's going to help me because I'm trying to complete my PhD in metaphysics. So it's going to help. So thank you for that.
Well, see, and my dissertation turned into the book.
Oh, I love that. I'll take that. Thank you. I love it.
Yeah, that's the Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4 book.
I love
dissertation.
That's a good one, because I'll tell you what, I have told people the good Lord has got a 2x4 and he's given it to every one of my guides to beat me with, because I don't know enough to listen and just do as I'm told. So, Dr. Rita, how can the people find you?
So the easiest place to find me is at my webpage, which is soulhealer.com. So SOULHEALER.com. And, the videos are on there. There's tons of articles, all of my books, including the new one, Dang, It Was Me All Along. But all of my books are available on Amazon and, like all the major booksellers. And if I can say so, on Thursday nights, I do a live stream that can be accessed either on Facebook or on YouTube. So it's Dr. Rita Louise -live on Facebook. And then Just Energy Radio, which is my old radio show. But I had 14,000 subscribers. So I'm like, I'm not recreating it. And you can go there, you can go into the chat, you can ask questions, except not about dead people. And and just
people.
and we just, all right. I have a lot of fun. Because I just go right into the flow. And so I just never know what I'm going to say.
I think you're going to get at least one more subscriber, because I'm going to subscribe today. So,
okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me, Dr. Rita Louise. This has been so much fun, such a pleasure. I can't wait to really scour your website and see which more is in there and just kind of really dive in. And I hope everybody else does too.
Yay.
So, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
This has been such a blessing for me. So everybody else, I'll see you next Monday morning here on School Through Spirit on the Edge Network. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye, Dr. Rita.
Bye.
There are psychic mediums, but there is nothing like DEET. Let's face it, we all struggle time and again. But if you seek the clarity you deserve, then you need to seek DEET. As a master teacher, DeEtte studied under international psychic medium Lisa Williams. Together, they not only help DeEtte better tap into spirit, but also build a long-lasting relationship. So many psychics tell us what we want to hear, and that just won't cut it with DeEtte. She tells you what you need to hear. No sugarcoating here. To book a reading with DeEtte is simple. Just visit her website, deette.us. That's deette.us. And follow the Yellow Brick Road to connect with DeEtte. Don't just sit there and ponder those questions. Ask them and let DeEtte guide you every step of the way. You need insight now, and DeEtte can help. Just visit DeEtte.us. That's DeEtte.us.